So you want to become a highly successful nomadic closer, but you think you need to be an expert to do so. And that's the exact reason why most people stay broke. In this video, we're not only going to show you why you do not need to be an expert, but also why it can even hurt you if you want to build a successful business online. And on top of that, if you watch the video all the way till the end, you're also about to discover the steps to come across as an expert without actually being one.
So first you have to understand one thing, and that is what is actually the role of a coach and what is the role of a nomadic closer. As you might know, the closer's job is basically to generate revenue, in other words, close deals. And the job of any coach is, guess what? Delivering the product and the service and creating content, consulting the client and so on. So it is not your job to give advice. Your job is to convince people that the product is awesome and it's life-changing rather than just giving the solution up front. And there's actually a thing called curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is basically this: the more you learn about a subject, the more you become an expert. And to the beginners, you sound more like someone who's not understandable. You can imagine this kind of like you talking to a professor who's talking very high level stuff and you're just starting in the beginning and you have no idea what he's talking about. And this is curse of knowledge. So it actually hurts you the more you know.
And as time goes on, you start to summarize concepts in your mind. You start to use industry jargon. You start to shortcut like certain things because for you, it's second nature. You understood the concept, but for the other person, it is all new stuff usually. And it's quite hard for you to go back to that beginning mindset once you are at a certain stage of knowledge. And that's the whole curse in that sense. So then you might be asking yourself, okay, if I don't need to know everything, what if I cannot answer their questions and they're asking me stuff in the call and I'm like, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. And so here is how you tackle that. So generally speaking, it is really not about answering their questions. Obviously, you need to understand how you can handle such a question. But when we go into conversations of making a deal happen, the person who starts explaining first is losing the negotiation. And obviously you want to win the deal. So you want to minimize the time you're explaining things in the conversation. There is a certain point where this is all coming into place, but generally speaking, it is not about explaining and answering questions. It's about you asking the right questions in the right time and guiding the person through a certain proven process. And a classic mistake here is to think that you need to have all the answers. Like there are these people out there, they have like these 40 slides, PowerPoint deck, and you see this maybe in movies if you haven't done it yourself or haven't been sitting in one yourself. You see like people watching at the PowerPoint presentation, super bored, and somebody is in the front explaining like every little nitty-gritty detail. And that's just like the absolute opposite. That's pure explaining, and that's what you want to avoid at all costs.
What I think is very important is frame control. So when you start to explain something, you're giving away the control to the prospect, and you can take back the control by asking a question of why does he need to know that, or what does he need to know in order to move forward, for example.
So essentially it comes back to guiding the person and taking control of the conversation through asking questions. So that way it's like perceived that the person who is explaining has the control, but you're guiding with the questions you ask, and you have like a clear line where you want to go with the whole thing. And that is really like what you need to do instead of explaining and knowing like the answers to every little question.
Yep. And also you're going to be perceived as an expert because who's asking questions? The expert. Being an expert isn't everything. Why should somebody buy from me when I don't know anything about the industry is usually a question that we get asked a lot. But this is just the fear that you have in your mind. It's nothing real, because in a real closing conversation, the focus is not on you as a closer. It's on the prospect and how he can solve his problems and get to his desired outcome, right? And it's not about you making a commission here and there. It's about them solving real problems, right? And the concept of people closing themselves through asking the right questions is really the thing that guides everything. And this really gives the prospect the clarity they need in order to make this buying decision. So it's way more important to focus all your energy on the customer rather on being perceived as an expert or educating them on anything. And there's also this misconception that you need tons of experience as a nomadic closer just to make it. But nothing could be further from the truth, because there are three types of coaches: the ones that want the pros, the ones that want beginners, and the ones who simply don't care. And let me explain you why there are those three types of coaches. So the first type, who wants the pros, is basically people who don't have a lot of experience, right? They don't want people who have just maybe read a book on sales or something. They want people who have closed at least like 500 100K, a million or so. And that is because they can't close themselves, right? They have never been in the industry. They have never closed a deal themselves, and they don't want to learn it. They don't have training in place and nothing, right? So they rely on other people educating those closers to get started. And these are the worst kind of coaches that you can partner with, because they won't support you, basically. And then there are the ones who want beginners, because beginners don't have baggage, right? Because when a closer learns techniques that are maybe outdated, right? Used cost salesman techniques, pressure sales, and what have you, like these 45 slides presentations, these are really hard to unlearn. And that is why some people say, okay, I don't want to have closers who have 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience. This is outdated stuff that they learn. And then there are the coaches who simply do not care of the experience of the closer, because they have systems in place to train a closer from the beginning up to high performance. And this is really where we are at. We don't care about people who are very good, because we unlearn everything that's not working for them and replace it with something that's working in internal training, for example. And when someone is a beginner, right, doesn't matter at all. And then it's not a matter of, do I have experience for this position? But what is more important then is the vibe, the general team culture maybe, and how people get along with each other. And that's way more important than just the experience, because skills can always be learned. And you have actually some advantages if you're a beginner, right?
Absolutely, Sam. Like, it's really like starting with a blank page in front of you. So you have, as you said, like no baggage from any past experiences. And when you're just starting out, you're open to learning really quickly and extensively. You see like new processes and you want to try to figure things out. And that comes in very, very handy in this kind of position, because it's all about like results and adopting fast and just being open to like those new things coming. And usually when somebody starts, it's also like whenever you start something, you're like hot for it. You really want to make it happen. You're like hungry for success. You're usually like excited to even go the extra mile and so on. And somebody who has been in that industry for years and maybe like closing deals for years is maybe like not like that anymore. They're like, yeah, you know, like I know what I can do, what I don't do, and they're like that. And that is for the other side, like the person who's hiring you. Just imagine you have this one person that is like, yeah, I don't care about like what you're telling me. I know what I do. Like I've done it many years. Who are you to tell me something? Versus somebody who is young and fresh and is like, hey, like tell me what I can do. Like let's make it happen. Let's go. I'm excited. Who would you prefer to hire? And Sam went into that in a moment. But for me and for us, it's usually like there is many bonus points to being a starter, to being fresh to the industry and just starting out and going for that with that energy. So also usually those people have still like the flexibility to adjust new things. And so you're like unaffected by any like previous negative experiences. If someone, for example, didn't have like such a program that like brings you to performance, or didn't have an idea themselves what to do, and they just gave you like the prospects and like, okay, now here you go, have fun, like close the deals, right? And so some people are burned by this and they're coming in very skeptic, and the energy of that freshness is like a little bit gone. And so again, this plays in very much into like this beginner mindset where you're just fresh, you're hungry, you want to go, and that comes in as a big advantage, as we experienced with many different projects in the past.
And being new doesn't have to mean that you're only gonna do this if you're very young, right? You can also do this when you're 50, 55, even 60, or if you're very young, maybe 18, 19. There's no age limit or age restriction on becoming a nomadic closer and picking up something new. In fact, if you want to change something in your life, you can do it right now. So in case you are asking yourself how you actually gain that confidence to be perceived as an expert, there are a few strategies that you can do. And one of them is just becoming better at what you do, right? Rapid implementation of knowledge. So for example, if you want to go into the finance niche and close for a finance coach, educate yourself a little bit on finance, read a book or so, or maybe you can go through the marketing materials of the coach. That might help.
Yeah, this is very important, because if people start talking to you in those kind of conversations, you have to understand what have they seen before and what kind of materials they have been exposed to before. And so usually it's mainly the marketing stuff, right? So like any videos on YouTube, any advertisements, the website, this is literally all people can see. They click a button to book in a conversation, and here they are with you talking about the whole thing. And this is like the standard of knowledge most of them gonna have. And so from there on, you guide with the questions, as we mentioned earlier in this video, and you're still like perceived as an expert because you are like guiding the conversation. You have an idea what you're asking. Sometimes it's also like specific questions to ask for, and that is exactly the key here.
There's one thing that you always have to keep in mind, and this is the general level of education that most people have. And if someone is a beginner, they mostly have no understanding of anything whatsoever. So what you could do is you just read one chapter ahead of the person who's on the call with you, and that's it. You don't need to be invested for 10,000 hours into this whole topic. You can just educate yourself for 1 or 2 weeks and you will be ahead of 99% of the people who are on the call with you.
And it can also make sense to request access to any courses or coaching programs that you're actually closing for that specific coach. And if it's like a service, you can ask for case studies so that you just get more touch points with what actually is happening in the background as well. And that gives you also confidence into like starting having those conversations from the get-go.
But by far the most important thing is that you actually invest time in your own skill building. You have to learn those closing techniques across different scenarios, and you need to do it consistently every single day, right? And if you want to get started in this and you want to learn nomadic closing, you can sign up for a free masterclass in the description of this video.